Have you ever struggled in a creative situation with someone else where you just can't seem to agree on anything? We're talking about creative differences today on the podcast. We'll see you on the inside. What's going on, everybody? This is Mike from the Songwriters Planner. You are listening to the Songwriters Podcast. And today we are talking about something that I think all of us experience at one point or another, especially if we create and work with other people or on a team. We're talking about creative differences today. And I really thank you guys for swinging by. I want to take a moment and say thank you for checking out this podcast. I very much appreciate it, as always. Like I say it over and over again, I have a great time doing these. It's really fun to get to talk to you guys about certain issues that artists and musicians face in today's modern music landscape, I should say. And I really appreciate you guys checking it out and listening when you can. I know that we are all busy. We all have busy schedules, and I really do appreciate the time that you are able to check these podcasts out. Even if you don't get to check out all of them, hopefully I can provide some kind of value to you, either one podcast or two podcasts, or whatever works for you. So thank you out there, guys. And also wanted to mention too, if you haven't checked out the Songwriters Planner, I have it right here in my hand. People listening on podcasts, if you hadn't had a chance to check out the Songwriters Planner, please do. It's www.songwritersplanner.com, and it's a 6-month weekly planner designed specifically for artists and musicians, put together by myself, and nothing but a productivity tool for people like us. And hopefully it helps you stay more scheduled, be more productive, and creative and inspired. Those are all the things that I think all of us could use at one point or another. So, all right. I wanted to talk today this week's podcast about creative differences. And now that encompasses a lot of territory when you're talking about artists. And it doesn't matter if you're a musician or if you work in the creative field. Anytime you work in a collaborative effort, a group setting, it could be just even if you just have one other person that you collaborate with, you can definitely create awesome things together. I think creating art and creating in general really benefits from collaborating or benefits from a group setting. Ideas can go in places that you did not even think that they would go when you collaborate with other people. And, I think that we all have egos unto ourselves, and we always think, well, I don't need anybody. I can just, write my own music and put my own stamp on things, and I don't need to be working with anybody because I am I'm self-contained. And that, let me just say right now that is nothing wrong with that. If that is your MO, if that's how you do your best work, then don't change a thing. I'm certainly not here to tell you that you have to collaborate to get your best work. That's not the case. But from my experience in working with other artists, and of course, my main default mode is a drummer. So I do work with many other artists, and I have worked with some amazingly talented artists in the past. I've always witnessed that your ideas can really go in places that you just never thought they could go when you work with other people. And that's true with any industry. I mean, it's true with like the tech industry. It's true with, being a lawyer. Heck, it doesn't really matter. That's why I just kind of really believe that collaborating and stuff like that really can take you in places that can create things for you that you never really thought you could imagine. However, we're not talking about that today, how awesome it is. We're talking about the flip side. We're talking about when you hit a roadblock with someone and to the point where you just cannot agree on where your project should be going. Now, this pertains not just to music, okay? This also applies to any kind of situation about your music project or your band or your career. You may have creative differences with, say, your manager. Your manager thinks you should be going this way. You should be doing this. And you're like, no, I should be going this way and doing this way. It's not just within creative spaces. It can also be in a business space where you have creative differences. That just works that way. And so I don't want to limit this podcast to just working with another creative. This definitely applies to working with other people who are helping you with your music or are involved with your music. And like I said, that could be a manager. That could be your accountant. Your accountant says you should be spending money on this or you should be saving money. And you're like, no, I got to spend more money here. So it really doesn't matter. It's just kind of all encompassing. So what I wanted to talk about today was things that we can do and things that we should remember when we get into this kind of landlocked situation where you just cannot agree on something. What are some tips and some steps that we can take to make sure that the relationship works, number one, and that people don't feel like they're getting stepped on, and people don't get insulted or feelings get hurt or things like that. Especially because we're talking about an art, it's really, really easy to take things personal. And I've had that experience before, and I'm sure you have too, where you may have written something. Okay, let's say you wrote something, and man, you think this is like the best thing you've written in months. The riff is killer, the groove is killer, or something like that, and you show it to, say, your band member, another band member, or you show it to someone to collaborate with, and they're like, it's all right. And you're like, what are you talking about? It's all right. It's killer, man. And they just don't see it the way you see it. I'm sure that you've had those kinds of situations. I know I have. And it's just so frustrating because you're like, man, I just wrote something that I think is awesome, and I want to inject it into my project with this other person, and they are just like cold fish on it. That is like the beginnings of some creative differences that you can have. And that is, like I said, it's very frustrating. Like, how do you handle that? How do you express to someone that I really like this, it really is important to me, and I really like to use it, without attacking them and going, F you, man, like, no, you better do it this way. It's just a hard situation to deal with. And I think that all of us as musicians and artists, we encounter that a lot during our careers. So let's talk about creative differences in music. And, like I said, an example would be coming up with music and just someone else just not feeling it or something like that. That I can see that can really be taken personal because we're very sensitive to the things that we write. And most of the time, if we're going to feel confident enough to take an idea that we've given birth to and put it in front of someone else and say, check this out, then you have a level of confidence about that idea or that piece of art, and you already can be protective of it. That's okay. Like, we're all like that. You can already be protective of this thing that you're ready to show to people. And if this person that you're showing it to is one of your closest collaborators creatively, and they are just completely dead silent on it, it's painful, man. And this creative situation where you're like, well, I thought this was really cool. So that would be one kind of a creative difference that we probably experience more often than not. Now, again, and like I was talking earlier, another creative difference is that you could have with your manager, and you're like, or someone that is helping you with your career. And I'll take a manager, for example, and you say, like, I think I should be playing this many shows a month, and I want to focus on these areas or this type of crowd. And your manager's like, I think you should be playing less shows a month, so as to not dilute your crowd, and you should be focusing on this demographic of people. That's another conflict between how you envision your journey as an artist compared to someone else who's looking at you going, their vision of you is different. Again, like our careers, our musical journeys, we also take that personal. as artists. We also look at that because we have a vision for that. We're like, man, I want to go in this direction. And sometimes working with someone who's a manager or whatnot, because they've either maybe have done it before and they've gone down a path of promoting artists, that they kind of want to push you in a way that they know. So that is a tension that can happen as well. And again, I've felt that before in working with managers. And if you do have a manager, or you eventually want to have a manager, you're going to have that kind of a situation. So these are very challenging as artists, because all we want to do is create art. All we want to do is create music and write music and play music. That is our default mode. That's all we want to do, man. We want to write music, we want to play it, and we want to entertain crowds, and we want people to love us, and we want people to just, find out who we are and become instant fans. That's what we want. Dealing with drama, dealing with problems in bands, dealing with problems with management, that's stuff that we do not want to deal with, okay? And because we don't want to deal with it and probably never liked dealing with it, I'm gonna assume here, and I could be wrong, but we just we never really develop the tool sets to handle and to deal with these kinds of situations. Now, if you're familiar with dealing with creative differences and drama, and you do it all the time, then you do have the tool sets to know how to deal with it, and maybe they're good or bad, but I know as an artist myself, I don't like dealing with drama and things like that in bands, and it's difficult. It really is difficult. So what I want to do is let's go through and talk about what we can do, the things we can keep in mind when it's time to deal with our creative differences with someone else. What are some tips that we can keep in mind and remember that are important so that we save the creative relationship, we don't step on people's toes, and we're respective of each other's ideas? What are these things? What can we do? What kind of tools should we have in our toolbox so that we can handle these situations better? Okay. First thing I want to talk about is we need to remember to keep an open mind. Now that's easier said than done, but unless you are the artist and you are paying people to play your music, if you're cutting checks and paying people to play your music, and you're the head person in charge, then by God, there is no creative difference. You are the creative, and everybody else needs to follow you. Everybody else is an employee. That's completely legit. If you are in that situation, then you're not going to have creative differences unless you ask for them. But most of us are not in that situation where we have the luxury of being able to pay other people to just play the music that we write. So keeping an open mind is really, really important when you're working in a group setting or a collaborative effort. Remembering that your opinion and your idea, as you may think, is great, but someone's going to have another opinion about it. I mean, I may write something that to me sounds like the Beastie Boys, and to someone else it sounds like punk rock or something, or it sounds like a totally different artist. And just like that cross section of interpretation can be different than what you interpret. So keeping an open mind, not being defensive right away, right off the bat, is a good way to kind of keep the doors open for discussion, okay? Especially if you're in a collaborative situation that really works well, most of the time. It's not worth jumping all over and everything like that right away. It's great to just listen, keep an open mind about it, and get feedback from other people and take it in and interpret and compute that information that you get from them. From there, then you move on and figure out what's next. So the next suggestion would be, aside from keeping an open mind, listen to everybody's input. Listen to each other. Listen to what other people have to say. Sometimes that can be really difficult because what other people might say is not what you were expecting or not what you wanted to hear. And that it can be really, really difficult to hear, especially if you're not used to hearing it and if you're in a new creative situation. So try your hardest to make it a point to listen to everybody's input and hopefully you're in a setting, you're in the trust tree. Hopefully you're in a situation where people aren't stomping on your ideas, just being very disrespectful. That's just not going to help anybody. I know, like, hanging out in bands for many years, for me, it's like you're hanging out at a band and it's like hanging out at a locker room and people say, that's crap. That's not going to go anywhere. And we just say it because that's how we are. But when you approach it and you get to a situation where you have an opinion about something, it's best to be honest about it and be respectful of other people's ideas, and save the locker room talk for when you're out drinking or something. I don't know. Now, just keeping an open mind and listen to other people's suggestions. Also, on the flip side, if someone brings something to you and you don't honestly you're not feeling it, be respectful and listen to their idea first. But if you're not feeling it, just be respectful of them and be honest, and just kind of say, well, I may not be feeling it the way you're feeling it. So why don't you explain to me what your complete vision for something is, and then I'll see if I can latch on to that. Just find different ways to work with an idea instead of just shutting things down. And that goes for if you're on the other side and someone brings something creative to you, you just want to make sure you're keeping an open mind, and then you listen to other people's suggestions, listen to all the feedback first before you decide on where to go. Okay. Another thing is to, don't lose your head. Don't lose your head when it comes to disagreeing with someone else on where something should go creatively. Everybody, like I said, everybody has an opinion, and everybody has different visions of where something should go. I mean, the same exact song or riff heard by two different people can be interpreted two different ways. That's because we come from different backgrounds. We all have different influences. So one person may hear it one way, another person may hear it another way. And when you don't agree on it, don't lose your cool. Stay grounded. Talk about it. Maybe suggest ideas that go along with another creative idea. Try adding on to a creative idea, or suggesting things that may make it even better, or just add your idea to it. There's just so many ways you can diffuse a bomb, I should say. There's so many ways you can diffuse a creative bomb. It just takes practice and the right tools to make sure that no one loses their head. That's basically what the message is, okay? Another thing that I wanted to suggest is, like I was talking about, offer a compromise. And that only happens when you're completely honest with the person. You say, listen, I'm not feeling it, and I'm not feeling it the way you are. How about if we tried it this way? How about if we, change the riff or change the idea or change the groove this way, just slightly, to where I'm feeling it too. Because then if I'm feeling it now and you're feeling it, hopefully, now we got something. Now we have an idea that we both can be really excited about. But if I'm working on something that I'm really not that into, I'm not going to give you my best, and vice versa. If I'm asking you to work on something, on an idea that you're not feeling, then you're not going to give me your best. And same goes with any creative situation. So it's in your best interest to offer like a compromise to something, and be like, oh yeah, man, like how about if I just inject a little bit of this idea in there and compromise on this part? How about at the end of the riff, or how about at the end of the song we go into a lift, or how about we move the bridge a little bit closer to the second chorus? Just things that you can try to compromise on an idea without stepping on other people's toes and without hurting people's feelings. And you never know, like, you might get something amazing out of it. You just never know what kind of music or what kind of ideas you can come out of if you just kind of compromise and let other people inject ideas into your ideas, and then you do the same when someone comes to you with an idea that you may not be feeling, okay? And then the last thing I want to mention, the last tip, I should say, when you hit a stalemate, when you're in a creative situation, you hit a stalemate and you're arguing and you just have moved past the point of being productive and being creative to the point now where you're hot, your feelings are hurt, and the other person's not feeling it, or there's a group situation where nobody's feeling something. I would say move on and don't force an issue. Don't force the issue. Give it some time. Give it some time to marinate. Don't get in a situation where you have to shove ideas into people's faces and get this done now. Give it some time. Let it breathe, man, because if you're in a creative situation that is worth staying in, then just give it a little bit of time to breathe out, and then work on some ideas on your own. When you guys get together, work on something else. Don't work on this thing that's causing the problem for you. Just let it breathe. And sometimes you take a step back and you're like, you have a drink, you smoke a cigarette, you wait a week or two, and you're like, well, I can see myself working with this idea. I can see myself finally coming around and adding to this idea that so-and-so has, or vice versa. If you're the one who has the creative idea and you go, okay, I kind of see where you're coming from. Maybe if we just change this part or make a couple of changes here that you suggested. Time always works in mysterious ways, and sometimes the best time to come up with the best ideas is not right now. You know what I mean? It may not be the moment that you introduce a new song or a new idea to someone. It may take time for it to come through. And sometimes the best songs and music aren't written in a day. They're written over years. They can go for years, man. And that's just from the collaborative process of liking ideas, not liking ideas, getting other people's input, and just staying creative. Staying creative, so important to do that. Staying productive is so important because you don't want to hit a productive wall. Now you're not doing anything, and that can hurt you if you're really active, if you really want to stay active and keep getting your music out. And the last but not least, the last ditch effort is that if you've tried all these things and you just over time and you just cannot get things to work, okay, move on. Move on from the creative situation. Move on from it. Learn from it. End it well, because you never know when you're going to run into people again in the scene and just say, this situation isn't working for me. I don't feel like I'm going to be able to contribute in a way that I'd like to, and we can't compromise. There's no compromising happening. People's feelings are getting hurt. Sometimes it's just best to move on. And it's always sad to see a creative situation like that end, but you never know. Like, you might get back together again. You might work together again in the future. You might get back with a certain group again in the future. You never know. The only thing is that just make sure if it is time to end it, be open-minded about it and be respectful of everybody, and just kind of don't burn bridges, especially in the music industry. I know the industry, quote unquote, is questionable, but especially in this day and age when everybody's connected via social media, via networking, everybody's connected. Don't burn bridges, man, because if you do that, it could close doors and opportunities for you in the future. And you just don't want to leave a situation where you just burned it, and you may have creative opportunities in the future that aren't open to you because of a bad relation you had with someone else that you were working with. So try to always make sure that you end your creative situations with respect, and that's cool, and that you might work again in the future. Just something to think about. Again, last ditch effort, especially you don't want to leave situations that are really good and that are where you really create some cool art, but it's not always going to work out that way. So, all right. That is what I wanted to talk about today on the podcast. I hope that this kind of resonates with you as an artist, because we all go through these kinds of situations. And like I said, our default mode is to create music, play music, write music, and have fun. That is what we all love to do. And the better that we have the tools to deal with differences with people that we're working with, the faster you're going to move through that conflict and get back to doing what it is that you do best, which is create music, write music, and play music. So keeping in mind the things we talked about today, hopefully that will give you some insight into how to handle your next difference with someone else creatively, and just kind of make sure that the best outcome happens the next time you run into this situation. And I hope today's podcast helped out with that. And so I really appreciate you guys checking this out. And if you have any comments, questions, or something to add to this podcast, please hit me up. Please, I invite you. Send me an email, hit me up on Facebook, hit me up on Instagram, no matter what. I'm always here. My light is always on, and I love hearing from you guys. So thank you. And we will see you on the next podcast. Peace and love, guys.